Okay, so I would like to talk about card games, and specifically I want to talk about deck building card games like Magic the Gathering, Hearthstone and Marvel Snap. And this story starts way back when the original collection money making machine for children hit the world.
Pokemon.
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 When it comes to the biggest Pokemon craze, it has to be the trading cards.
Pokemon was a huge part of my childhood, and as I understood it back then, it was a huge part of every childhood. And I think for many people, Pokemon was the gateway drug to deck building card games. And I think back then, even though I didn't actually play the game that much, I very quickly developed a connection to the cards. Beyond being an excuse to hoard and collect cardboard, for me it was about holding something powerful and rare. The potential of a card, even if I didn't play with it, was almost enough of a rush to keep my interest. The card felt like it had magic properties because it could do something unique and different from other cards. And I think that's an aspect of card games we all feel, but we don't talk about that much. And I think when you set out to make a deck building card game, that feeling should be there somehow. But that also comes with a problem. Sometimes the cards are rare because they hold some cultural favoritism for whatever reason, but sometimes cards are rare because they are powerful in the rules of the game you are playing, which means you have to find a way to acquire them. And this is a staple of any deck building card game. You spend money, you get a pack, you open it, maybe you get something you need, maybe you don't, and you try again. And yes, there are ways to reduce this chance, but I at least have felt many times in many different card games that to stay competitive, I had to pay a premium. And honestly, over the years, it has become tiresome and expensive, and I eventually found myself longing for a deck building card game that didn't require all this investment. Although I didn't play the Pokemon card game all that much, the same can't be said for Yu-Gi-Oh! Yu-Gi-Oh! Was the first time for me where the act of collecting cards, building a deck and actually playing with them came together. Yu-Gi-Oh! Cards were bizarre, the synergies were weird, and the manga, which I read in its entirety, was dark and strange. This is when I think I actually fell in love with deck building card games. It's where I saw the potential of combining unique cards to create some unholy strategy that could secure the victory against my opponent. And I would have tons of fun making different kinds of decks themed around some kind of mechanic or some kind of creature, and we would play those decks against each other. However, if you had to keep improving or were looking to try out something different, you also sort of had to keep buying more cards. Otherwise, you would fall behind. And over the time I spent with Yu-Gi-Oh!, that sort of became a harder and harder sell. Firstly, I had to buy more cards, then I had to spend time making a deck, spend time setting up time to play with someone. They also needed to have a deck, and it was only really fun if the decks were roughly equal strength. So lots of problems with the game were growing over the years, which meant I eventually left Yu-Gi-Oh! But then a different experience came. In the summer of 2013, myself and some friends attended Gamescom in Germany. And this event was awesome. We got absolutely smothered in cheap gaming merchandise, to the point where IGN felt the need to interview me and my friend about Ben Affleck potentially playing Batman. And to this day, it's one of the few proofs I have that I actually go outside. But as we were walking around, we saw something incredible. Hearthstone was there, and it was playable. I was absolutely transfixed. It was smooth, it was elegant, it had so much charm and charisma. Hearthstone obviously took the world by storm and told us that card games were cool and for everyone. And it had so much character and flair, it just worked. And Hearthstone solved a bunch of issues I had with Yu-Gi-Oh! Firstly, they told me I could play the game for free and just unlock cards by playing the game. Awesome. Sure, it took some time, but that seemed fair. I could unlock a lot of cards for free and begin building, and if I really needed a card, I could spend some money getting what I needed. Secondly, they would matchmake me against people of my level to have fair fights. Thirdly, the game was online. I could play it anywhere, and I could just play it when I wanted to. perfect. However, over time, cracks were beginning to show. With every new expansion, grinding for cards seemed harder and harder. There were just more cards. So if you really wanted to be up to date, for most people I think that meant buying cards. And something else was also happening. A certain trend in the game was growing. Hearthstone had stopped being a game where you had to build your deck, and instead it became a game where you had to build the right kind of deck. And here we need to talk about net decking. So net decking is something that exists in all current deck building card games like Magic and Hearthstone, and essentially it means that you copy the most effective decks online to stay competitive. So instead of developing your own strategy, you see what tournament winners are doing and then you just play that kind of deck. This meant that for the most time the game became more about keeping an eye out for the current meta and figuring out which strategy was currently the best and then buying those cards and playing that. Which meant a lot of the exploration was kind of taken away, and the game honestly felt more like pay to win. For me, it also took out a lot of the creativity from the game, or the part that I found fun. And yes, there was still a lot of creativity in the game. It just felt like it was reserved for the people who could dedicate a lot more time to the game than I could. But running into the same couple of strategies over and over again created a lot of issues. In many ways, it stopped feeling like I was actually playing a person. It felt more like I was playing an AI with a certain kind of strategy. And the game was about beating that strategy, not beating another person. At least that's how it felt to me, and eventually the game got stagnant. And I also left Hearthstone. It just wasn't fun anymore, and it had essentially removed a very big part of the fun of deck builders. The skill of actually building a good deck was no longer required. And this is one of the final points that I think is really important to remember, especially with what happened next. During university, a fellow student had this game called Star Realms. Star Realms was simple, it had a deck of cards, and the goal was to defeat your opponent by building the best deck. Which all sounds very familiar. However, in Star Realms, you had to build the deck whilst you were playing the game. I think now the time has come to talk about true deck building card games. So in most deck building card games like Magic, Hearthstone, Yu-Gi-Oh!, Marvel Snap and so on, you actually divide the skill of the game into two phases. There's the skill of actually building the deck, and then there's the skill of playing the game itself during the match. I think most would agree that the skill sits more with actually building a solid strategy in the deck, and then during the match you are more or less watching those synergies unfold. You obviously still have some decisions to make, but primarily your deck composition will determine the outcome. True deck building games, as I like to call them, take inspiration from the Magic format booster draft. There you take rounds to draft cards from a selection of cards until you have full decks, and then you play those decks against each other. This is also somewhat similar to Hearthstone's arena mode. The nice thing about this format is that it challenges each player to build strategies on the spot. It levels the playing field and negates the effect of someone spending more money on cards than other players. Games like Dominion, Star Realms and Hero Realms take this format and make it into an actual games. These are the games that I choose to call true deck building card games. In those games you typically use resources to buy more powerful cards from the marketplace, and then you add those cards to your deck and then you play those cards. And the beauty is that the setup is always a bit randomized. You can't always utilize the exact same strategy. You have to adapt and you have to wager your short-term goals with your long-term goals. Do I kill the opponent's champions, or do I attack him directly? Do I buy this powerful card, or do I buy this other card just so the opponent can't buy it? The strategies don't become nearly as complex and intricate as in Hearthstone, Yu-Gi-Oh! Or Magic, but on the other hand, these types of games challenge players on their ability to build a powerful synergy on a much more even playing field where both players have access to the same cards. There are still better strategies than other strategies, but since every start is randomized, you have to rely on your intuition and skill to get the job done. And I think in traditional deck builders like Magic and Hearthstone, that is still the case, but it can feel like it is reserved for the elite, not for an average player. And listen, I'm not the first person to recognize some of the issues with traditional deck builders. All the way back in 2018, pro Hearthstone player Reynad announced The Bazaar, a game that was supposed to be a deck building card game, a game he wanted to make, because he had recognized many of the same issues these other games had. However, The Bazaar ended up shifting towards becoming more of an auto-battler, and frankly, that is not the kind of game I wanted to play. I wanted a duel. I wanted to face off against my opponent and tell them right then and there that I probably lost. But I wanted to tell them that. And in order to do so, I decided to make my own game. Making a card game, especially alone, is not easy. But luckily, I found someone who shared my vision and had a very similar experience to my own.
That you could find lists of the existing cards online.
Yeah. Right.
And so we started looking at like all the different cards and kind of dreaming up decks that you could build with this.
Right.
And then,
Right.
you buy booster packs, but if you know what you want, getting booster packs is a bit of a hassle. And then we figured out that actually you could order cards online. Dream up a deck and you'd make this huge shopping list of like cards that you wanted. It felt too expensive to just try it and then have it flop. So what we did was we were like, oh, you know what? Let's just, print them out and put them in the sleeves, and then we'll play with it just to figure out if it even works.
Right.
Before committing to ordering it. And, then we never ordered it. And then I think there was a sort of moment there where it was like, yeah, I think the collector in me was damaged, where I kind of understood like, oh wait, but I'm being taken advantage of a little bit in that, I like this collecting and they use it against me to make me pay a reasonable amount of money for cardboard.
This is Janmark. Janmark is a talented programmer, and we had over the years of our friendship been dabbling in making some kind of game together, always looking for the right project to make. And somehow this one clicked for the both of us. So at the beginning of 2024, we began development of a new game.
This is Black Horizon Armada. Armada is a new digital deck-building card game. Your aim is to take control of the galaxy. To achieve this, you will have to build a powerful armada of weapons from across the galaxy. Armada is played across 3 systems. Each system has a planet with special rules and a unique set of starships, stations, and action cards that can be acquired to strengthen your fleet. However, in the galaxy, you are not alone in your ambitions. Others will oppose you, and you will have to conquer each challenger. To defeat the opponent, you will need to control the battlefield across each system, defending where the opponent is strong and attacking where they are vulnerable. In Armada, you build a new fighting force every time you play. In every battle, you will have to adapt to the unique combinations of cards available. You will need to learn how to assemble a well-orchestrated Armada, where every card works in harmony.
Okay, so that was the trailer for our new game, Black Horizon Armada. And this is only a trailer and a mock-up. The actual game currently looks like this. I can't explain the full extent of the game in this video. However, I do want to give you a taste of the essence of the game. Armada combines deck building with tactical play, where in every game you fight across 3 planets that changes the rules and possibilities for the game. In this scenario, the planet on the far left has a special ability that gives us a discount on cards in the system's marketplace. In the middle lane, our opponent has 2 ships that could damage us directly next turn, because we have nothing on our side to actually defend ourselves with. However, we do have 2 ships in the rightmost system that could help us out. These ships have the ability to warp, which means they can move from one system to another. If we wanted to strengthen our defense, we could move them from one system to the other. But in addition, these specific ships generate resources when they warp. Resources we can now use to buy a powerful card to aid in our goal to defeat our opponent. Armada is a constant balance between short-term and long-term goals, and optimizing your play for both is when the game really shines. The way we have designed Armada is for it to be a one-time purchase game. You buy it once for $10 or $15 and then you can just play it. You don't have to buy cards. We don't want to create any disparity between people who spend more or less on the game. Every match should start you on equal ground. In this way, Armada is a lot more similar to chess or an RTS game. There, every game has you start from the same baseline and then you build up your strengths throughout the game. And we really believe in this game. We want to finish it no matter what, because we believe it's the kind of game that really needs to exist for all the reasons mentioned in this video. In fact, a little over a week ago, we launched a Kickstarter campaign asking for support to finish this game. The campaign is live right now and you can check it out in the links in the description. And at the release of this video, the campaign still has a while to go, and maybe it succeeds, maybe it doesn't. Either way, we're gonna finish this game somehow. But if this game or story somehow speaks to you, you can support it right now on Kickstarter. And truly, every little step helps. Our campaign is designed for me and Jan Mark to dedicate our full time to finishing the game. This includes making art, music, audio, special effects, robust multiplayer, server handling, and overall just adding more content. We think a game thrives with a strong community, and we want to bring in the community to be part of the development as soon as possible. Many of the rewards on the Kickstarter offer access to early alpha builds, so you can help test the game and provide essential feedback to us. And then we will eventually launch the game in Steam's early access to continue development even further. And who knows, if you're watching this video in the future, maybe this game is already out and you can just play it. Thanks for watching.